Welcome back to another episode of the Hormone Hub podcast, where we talk all things perimenopause, menopause, and have the conversations no one else is having. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. Good morning, ladies. It is Kylie Pinwell here, your host of the Hormone Hub podcast. And today on the podcast, we've got a very special guest. So we've got Dr. Prudence Hall joining us. Now, Dr. Prudence Hall, or Dr. Hall, started as a traditional gynaecological surgeon and transitioned her career to focus on regenerative and integrated medicine. As the founder of the Hall Center in Santa Monica, California, she saw a critical need to address the problems confronting women and men experiencing the stubborn and often debilitating symptoms associated with aging. Her practice is focused exclusively on regenerative medicine, looking at the root cause of conditions and diseases rather than simply treating symptoms, which I absolutely love. She strives to help clients achieve optimal health and actively prevent disease without the use of pharmaceutical drugs when appropriate. Prudence Hall, welcome to the show. It is great to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really delighted to talk about hormones and anything you have on your agenda today.
Amazing. So obviously as a BGYN and transitioning into sort of more of a holistic practice, what was it that sort of triggered that transformation?
Well, that's a good question. I had two big transformations. One was the transformation right when I got finished my obstetrics and gynecology residency. And it was a tough residency. We took care of the poorest and sickest women in Los Angeles. So there was tons of surgical experience, tons of dealing with people on the verge of death in terms of gynecological problems. And I went out into my private practice and thought, I can do this. I got this. And when I started working with my menopausal women, I realized, Kylie, that I didn't know practically anything about menopause. I was not taught much beyond the check a couple of hormones, put them on Premarin and Provera, which is a pregnant horse's urine, and see them in a year. And I have to say that was shocking to me when I realized, after really doing so much gynecology work and consulting in at USC, that I didn't know what to do. And women were telling me, Prudence, we feel terrible. We're crying. We hate our husbands. We're sweating all night. Please, we're gonna off ourselves. We feel so depressed. And Kylie, I almost quit at that point. I thought, I'm here to serve women. I'm here to make an impact and to help alleviate suffering. And so that was the first time when I went into a huge relearning about what menopause was. And I traveled to different countries that had bioidentical hormones, and I started using them really in 1983.
Wow. Amazing.
Started little bits by little bits. And then I kept realizing, well, menopause is not just a lack of estrogen and ovarian hormones. It's also the thyroid deficiency. It's also adrenal deficiency. Those are the stress glands. And so I kept adding. And then came Jeffrey Bland, PhD, Dr. Bland. And he is the father of regenerative medicine, of functional medicine. And I love this guy. I mean, I had to take his class, a week-long class, several times because I just was so in love with the way the material was presented. And that's when it's a long time ago now. It's been 15 years, maybe longer, that I started bringing in, let's treat the core root causes of illness. Let's not paint the leaves green if the tree is dying. Let's fertilize the roots. Let's all those, and some of it is what you do. It's counseling and lifestyle, and so important. And that changed the way I practiced. That changed absolutely I practiced.
Oh, that's amazing. And we are totally singing the same language for sure. And that's the thing. And I always talk to women as your hormones are, because I get asked all the time, what supplement should I take? what HRT should I take? And I'm like, okay, well, it's not just one thing. I always sort of explain our hormones work together like an orchestra. They all work beautifully together, but then if one is off, it drags the whole thing out. So I'm so glad you mentioned, thyroid and adrenals, because they all work together. And if one part is out, they all tend to be out. So we need to address everything. Absolutely. That's great. So what sort of bioidentical hormones back in the 80s were you working with?
Well, so the traditional hormone that came in the mid 1940s was Premarin.
Yes.
So the researchers were pretty desperate to help women, and they were trying all kinds of different methods. And they put these little catheters into the horses that were pregnant, drained their urine, and basically made this very crude hormone. And those were basically horse hormones.
Yes.
They also combined it with a very dangerous progesterone. So natural progesterone, that's our bioidentical, the same progesterone that we have, is very safe. And our natural estrogens are very safe. But this initial voyage into helping women with menopause was not very successful. And Germany and France were using the bioidentical hormones, which I'm sure your listeners know about. Yes. They're the hormones. They're exactly the same hormones that you're making, that I'm making. Yeah. And those hormones not only treat the symptoms of menopause, which are hot flashes, night sweats, waking up all night, feeling depressed and anxious and worried, and OCD and brain fog, all of that your people know about already. But it treats the diseases that arise as we age.
Yeah.
So bioidentical hormones will help to decrease heart disease dramatically, which is the primary cause of death in women. And They decrease diabetes and dementia. All you have to do is listen to Dr. Bredesen talk to understand. And I just love that guy. And he's told me, I'm so happy you're putting women on estrogen. It's so good for their brains, and it helps to prevent the neurodegenerative decline of the brain. So
absolutely.
I use hormones in every different modality. I mean, the way there are creams, there's patches, there's drops, there's vaginal inserts, there are troches. I use everything.
Yeah.
Menopause is individualized, right?
100%. And I was just about to say that too. And every woman is different, and every woman presents differently. I'm sure you've seen in your practice, there's no two women coming in with the same sort of set of symptoms and the same also level of what's okay for her and what's not.
Right. And exactly, because if we don't address the thoughts and the hearts and the spiritual connection of the woman and really honor her for who she is, say, well, I know you don't like that, but we're going to do it anyway. Something like that. That's very disrespectful. And we are not going to get the results that we like to get when we really listen to who she is and what's important to her.
Yeah, absolutely. And likewise, when a woman goes to the doctor looking for that magic pill that's going to fix everything, she still needs to address those foundations of nutrition and lifestyle. And because it's also, you need those good foundations regardless of where you're at in life, I think, and regardless of, we're setting ourselves up now for our future health. So, so to sort of like take that holistic approach, I think is amazing. So talk to me a bit about, you talk about regenerative medicine. So can you sort of explain sort of a bit how that works?
Well, when you look at the core root causes of aging, I would say that would be hormonal imbalance, unhealthy lifestyles, and that includes diet, sleep, exercise, absolutely critically important. It includes toxicity. We're living in a toxic world, and we all have a lot of toxicity, whether it be the chemicals, for example, in Roundup, or whether it be mold, black mold, or there's just so many chemicals that we're exposed to, sprays and creams and preservatives and all of that. So toxicity. And there's also the whole gut. I mean, this has come into functional medicine, really introduced in Jeff Bland, really introduced the gut as a primary organ that affects every cell in the body, the brain, the skin, the bones, everything. So gut health, and what is the microbiome of your GI tract? And do you have parasites? And do you have yeast? And are you digesting your food?
Yes.
So not necessarily the food you eat, but the food you're able to ingest.
Yes.
And you're able to absorb. So functional medicine looks at all of those core root causes that cause future aging and current aging, and gets rid of them all. Basically, rebalance the gut. We're going to detoxify you. We're going to deal with stress. Oh, stress. We're going to deal with stress, which is a huge underlying cause. We're going to correct your diet and your sleep and your balance.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You fix those underlying things and all of the symptoms that are presenting resolve themselves. So I sort of see women all the time who want weight loss. I can't lose weight. I can't lose weight. I can't lose weight. My diet's perfect. I can't lose weight. I'm exercising. I'm going to the gym, eating really well, but I keep putting on weight. And that's the thing, is exactly sort of how we work as well, as we look at those underlying causes. Are you absorbing the nutrients from your food? Are you eliminating correctly? Are your detox pathways, are they working? With your stress to the eyeballs, your diet can be perfect on paper, but we're missing the mark because those stress hormones are out of control. So,
and what you said about the detox pathways, that's genetic. And so we're in the this is once again Jeff Bland, but we're in the era of genetics medicine. So looking to see what you're doing with your B12 and folate in terms of downstream markers of what happens when those are low or adequate. And the detoxification pathways are very important, especially with taking antibiotics or pharmaceuticals or hormones, anything. We detoxify everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And like you said, that toxic load that we're all just exposed to on a daily basis. So we all sort of think of, I need to go on a detox after a big girls' weekend or a big girls' trip to Bali. But it's not. It's what we do, I think, day to day, and how to, I guess, limit our exposure on a day-to-day basis as well.
Yes, it's kind of like what you do 90% of the time is really the critical part of your health. What you do maybe 5 to 10% of the time is much less important, but 90% clean, healthy, and organic, and sleeping 8 to 9 hours and exercising and good stuff. Good stuff.
We are speaking the same language. All right. So, Prudence, is there sort of anything that you can tell us about the Hall Centre and how you work with clients?
Well, at this point, I only do hormones. And I work with my daughter, Dr. Britton, who's a naturopathic doctor, and she does the gut and diet. And I talk to people about diet all the time, but really when people really need a more in-depth analysis, which I think is very important for everybody, then they go to her, and she does kind of the naturopathic stuff, as well as I've taught her hormones for probably 8 or 9 years now. She started before she even went to medical school because she knew she wanted to do that. And so you're given a lab slip, you call the center, you make an appointment, you're given a lab slip, either to go to a traditional lab, normally LabCorp, Quest, or wherever you are, whatever is covered by your insurance, and you get your blood drawn. And then I sit down. For example, I saw a new patient today at 9:00 in California time, and I have another one a little bit later, and then one at the end of the day. And I sit and I say, well, tell me about yourself. What's happening? What are things not going right? And I just listen. I really listen to them. Stuff comes up that I would never have the insight to ask. But generally, I ask about stress, and I ask about, now your menopause started at age 44, because menopause is like 44 to 48 or 49, but hormones start to decline. So for our younger listeners, I want you to know that really ovarian hormones start to decline at age 35. And so human growth hormone, which is a very important hormone. So I listen to what the problems are and what they consider to be the main reasons why they're seeking my attention. And a lot of times, Kylie, really it's weight loss. That happens to be a lot. For example, the new patient that I saw today, I mean, she told me that she had been on some hormones, but not on adrenals, not on thyroid, and her hormones were borderline low in terms of her thyroid hormones.
Yeah. And that's it. There can be normal and then there's optimal. I always talk about,
especially for the thyroid, 60% of the time, thyroid is diagnosed correctly, but 40% it's not. And she had been struggling with exercise, but she was too tired to exercise, really, with the menopausal symptoms that she was having, and having terrible sugar cravings, even though she was doing a good job with her diet. Trying to do a good job.
I've been there.
Yeah. So all of these problems will get addressed in the first visit. And then we call them in 3 weeks to see how they're doing. And then I see them again at 2 months and see, okay, we started here and now we're here. How are you doing with symptoms? And at the same time, I'm looking for high ApoBs. Now, that's part of the cholesterol fragment that is very responsible for heart disease. So the second time when I see him, I'm doing a lot more of these markers for inflammation and homocysteine.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and then I just correct it again. And then it's like, okay, now I can see you in 4 months. And then it's twice a year. And people are flying and happy and losing weight.
And I think that's important too, just to sort of make those like micro adjustments as you go, because we're not robots. And I think the way as we transition through menopause and post-menopause, we're never stagnant. So things are always changing, things are always going on. So I think that ongoing care is so important, I think, is missed in a lot of traditional medical care practices. So
40% of thyroid is missed.
Yes.
And it's just tragic because women will be struggling with their weight and with depression and with dry skin and hair loss. And their thyroid's fine. Everything's fine.
I know. And that's the thing. So as a nutritionist, I can't give someone a clinical diagnosis, but I can see on the paper that's come back the blood work, and I can see that those thyroid conversions just aren't happening, or I can see that there's antibodies or there's something going on. But where I and I have to tread a very careful path, but I can sort of help women with the questions to ask their doctor, just to sort of get them on that path. So their thyroid is it's acknowledged that their thyroid is underactive or subclinical. So it's really hard because it's missed so many times because A, the right markers aren't tested for it in the first place, and B, that normal range is so wide that if you're sitting on the low or the high end, you can feel like rubbish. And you're told that everything's normal, but you're not feeling anything but even close to normal.
That's right. And our normal levels are not ideal levels. For example, you take the thyroid stimulating hormone. That's a brain hormone that calls right down to the thyroid and says, I need more thyroid or I have enough. That marker in the United States is considered normal under 4.4. But in Europe, 1 to 2 is considered much more normal in terms of that level. And I can see when people are above 2, I start to say, well, I look at the reverse T3, the free T3, the free T4, the thyroid antibodies, and their symptoms.
Yes.
Symptoms so important.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where, it comes back to that conversation and sitting down, and you can sort of get such a better picture of what's going on for a woman by having that conversation. And I think you obviously have very skilled at asking the right questions to get that information out from that client. And that gives us a good picture, I think, of where they're at in their menopausal journey, where their stress levels are at, how they're feeling and what potentially is going on, sometimes even more so than a set of lab work.
I absolutely agree. I love blood work because it's just so exciting to see the follicle stimulating hormones falling and the estrogen levels rising and the T3s, that's their thyroid hormone rising. But right away, if your listeners and my listeners want to correct or help enhance their thyroid, you can have 3 to 4 Brazil nuts a day, which has good amounts of selenium in it, about 200 micrograms. And you can take some iodine drops or some iodine food substances.
Yes.
And right away, that's going to help with your thyroid to function better on its own without even need to see me.
That's exactly right. And that's the thing. It's just those little gems that we're never taught along the way. All right. Well, Prudence, it has been absolutely wonderful having you on the show today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. You and I are very much on the same page, and I think that your clients and your patients in Santa Monica are very happy to have you. And I know we do have a lot of ladies listening from California. So, ladies, if you are looking for someone generally interested in helping you as a whole person, not just as a symptom, I could highly recommend Dr. Prudence Hall from the Hall Centre. Now, you've also got, I think you had a little giveaway for our clients.
If you go to the center website is thehallcenter.com, there's an area that you can hit where you put your email in, and my book, Radiant Again and Forever, immediately downloads to your email. And Suzanne Summers told me to write this book. She interviewed me widely in her books on hormones and health, and I just absolutely have loved her over the years. And she said, look, each chapter choose a different medical condition. Choose one of your patients who's in menopause, one who's in perimenopause, one who only has a thyroid disorder. So I wrote this book, and bless her for guiding me with that.
That's good. She just recently passed away, didn't she?
She did.
Like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago.
Yes, she did. Yes.
Wow.
Bless her, because she contributed so much to the health of all of us. And anyway, she inspired that book and wrote my book. And so it's for free. I just want to give it away. I wrote it to educate women. I'd love
thank you so much. That's very generous. I will make sure that the link to that goes in our show notes as well. So we'll share it with our audience.
Thank you, Kylie. What a joy to be.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we will see you in the next episode.
Excellent.
Hello. I see you there, juggling work, family, life, all while navigating perimenopause and menopause. But guess what? Maybe it's time to break up with the hustle and grind. Going on a retreat is more than just about a vacation. It's an investment in your well-being and a step towards a happier, healthier you. So take a moment, consider the benefits of a retreat, and give yourself the gift of rejuvenation and self-care. Self-care is all about giving the best of you, not what's left of you. I want you to save $500 now. Jump in for the Reignite You retreat. We're running in Bali in April 2024 and October 2024. And yes, we sure do have payment plans available. See you there. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. You can head on over to the show notes at kyliepinwill.com/podcast, where you'll find all the links. Now, before we go, it would mean the world to me if you'd head on over to your favourite podcast channel, subscribe and leave a review. Don't forget to share it with your friends. Then stay tuned for next week's episode, and I can't wait to see you then.